Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. This week my guest is world-renowned ukulele player and pantomime star Andy Eastwood. He tells me how he was first introduced to this wonderful little instrument, being taught to self-edit from the master of comedy, and his love of performing pantomime. So please, sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. My guest for today's Panto podcast is, well, how can I describe you really? A performer, actor, uke
Go on,
player.
you carry on. I'm interested in hearing it. Yeah.
Uke player, world-renowned uke player as well. Andy Eastwood. Hello, Andy.
Hi, thank you very much for having me.
When did you first then pick up a uke?
The ukulele has been with me all my life because my granddad used to play it as far back as I can remember, as a little tiny tot. My earliest memories, literally, I'll go into my granddad's house and he would get the uke out and play George Formby songs, old comic songs, vaudeville, music hall type songs, country songs, any old sing-along type songs. And I was just brought up with it. It was my favourite thing. I was fascinated by it way back. I'm talking 1 year old. In fact, there's a picture of me, I think, at the age of 1, holding my granddad's ukulele. How about that? So it comes from back there. He died when I was 6. Just before he died, he bought me a little cheap uke, £4, I think £4.50 or £4. Little Chinese-made, mass-produced ukulele. And I just wanted to do it. I wanted to pick it up and play it. I started off, just with a couple of chords, got the old George Formby songbook out, and just taught myself to play it. So it goes way back. And, of course, I do it for a living, never done any other job. So I'm very lucky that he just provided me with a route, even though he never knew, because, as I say, he died before I even actually started properly to play. He passed away, but, he's given me my life's course, if you like, and he never knew about it.
Was he a good player?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, then he used to entertain his mates and do little shows with his pals. He was in the RAF as an engineer, and I think he used to do the old sing-alongs in the wartime and all that. But he never did it professionally. Just like a lot of people, just for a bit of fun back then. People made their own entertainment.
And did you do the little shows then when you were a kid?
Yeah, I started doing... my first paid gig was when I was 12. And I was walking around, I think it was like a vehicle rally or something like that with my parents. And I had my uke with me because I used to take it everywhere. And somebody said, "Can you play that?" And I said, "Yeah." So I got the uke out, did a few old songs, and a crowd gathered round. And at the end of it, they passed a hat round, and I collected something like 25 quid. And I thought, this is good, because all the kids at school were doing newspaper rounds for about £3 a week. And I thought, there's something in this. But I must be due for a pay rise soon. That was, that 25 quid I could do with going up now. There you go.
12 years old, 25 quid. You must have felt like a millionaire.
No, I thought this is a great idea. It was just exciting, though, because it's something I love doing. And, how lucky can you be to do something that interests you and that you enjoy and hopefully earn a living from it as well? We're very blessed to be able to do that.
So performing them with mum and dad behind you?
Yeah, my mum is a singer. She used to give singing lessons and piano lessons, and I remember sitting there as a kid, again, in the room while she was doing this, sitting quietly in the corner. So there was always music going on. My dad, who's no longer with us, he was great as a backstage helper. He would be a roadie to me when I first started out. He'd drive me to the gigs. He'd help me with the instruments, sort the instruments out, because he was very good at anything technical. The PA, he taught me about how to set up a PA system and all that kind of thing. All stuff that you need. So I was so lucky to have that, to start me off. Brilliant parents and my granddad. So it's a family thing, and I've grown up with that and always done it.
When it came then to pantomime, what was the first kind of experience? Did you go and see pantomime as a child?
Funnily enough, I never went to pantomimes very much. We used to go to the theatre, but my mum and dad never got into pantomime. I went to one or two, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I never went, but only a couple, like a friend from school was going and I tagged along or something. But I never was all that familiar with it, so I had to find my way. When I first got cast in a panto, I was thinking, oh, goodness me, what am I going to do? Because I couldn't remember anything about it. I mean, everybody knows certain things, but I had to, it was a baptism of fire, because I had to learn very quickly. And luckily, I was able to do that. I was cast with some very good people. I was working for Dougie Chapman. I did years and years of work for Dougie Chapman, doing his variety shows, his tours. And he was, of course, a massive producer of pantomimes. He used to have loads going on. The first one I did was a summer panto in Skegness. We used to do every Monday afternoon. And I played the bailiff in Cinderella. And then at Christmas, I played the same part at Bolton with Stu Francis as Buttons. So that was great, because Dougie's company were all great pros. They were all the kind of people who would help you along. And very soon you pick it up, no problem, with people like that around you. I mean, I'm talking about people like Steve Barclay was playing Dame. And Steve was always great with me. You know, I came along in my early 20s to working with Dougie. 22, I think. 21, 22 when I first started working for Dougie. And people like Steve took me under the wing. Well, you want to do this, try that, do that. Pete Lindup, a great mate of mine, plays Dame, brilliant Dame. He's done it all. He started off playing those little parts, went to comic, went to Dame. He knows it inside out. He can do panto standing on his head, any part you throw at him. In fact, he's done seasons where he's been playing one part and stood in for somebody else when they were ill or whatever in another one. He's just brilliant. And so with people like that around you, you can't go wrong. So I've always been the type of performer who likes to soak everything up like a sponge, you know. When I like to try and learn every day. So when you're working with great people, you just immerse yourself in what they do, pick up good ideas, reject the bad ideas. You can learn from everybody, good or bad. And before long, you kind of know what you're doing, hopefully.
That role then as bailiff, did you play the uke?
Yeah, always get the uke in, because that's
how do you get the uke in as bailiff?
Well, the thing about Dougie's pantos, which I loved about them, he was as old school as it gets. Dougie Chapman, he was brilliant, and so his pantomimes would be a variety show with a bit of plot woven around it. Which I love. I mean, for me, that's more interesting than a play with a few songs stuck in. It was because he was using the same people that he had on his variety shows, his summer seasons and his tours. He would take the same company and say, right, we'll do panto now. So you'd have all these people, you know, he'd have acts like Guy and Pat Holloway, the xylophone act, playing Mummy and Daddy Bear. Or he'd have... always have illusionists in Aladdin, you know, in the cave scene. You'd have great illusionists. Suddenly the show would stop and you'd have 10 minutes of magic. Brilliant, you know. So I went as bailiff. I had the uke, the violin, the guitar. So when we get to the ballroom, right, it's cabaret time. And I do a big medley with the instruments, you know, for the entertainment at the ball. And then we carry on with the story. But it's, for me, that's great, because that's what pantomime should be to me. I like all that side of it. I think you can get too carried away with the story, because the stories are so basic, aren't they? You can tell the story of Cinderella or Aladdin or any of them in 5 minutes. So it's what else you can put in that makes a pantomime magical to me.
When did you start to kind of develop and go for other stringed instruments?
Well, I started playing, as I said, around about the age of 6, and I think at 7, I was lucky enough to have violin lessons at school as well, because this is missing a lot today. They've cut back on music teaching in schools. It's gone down to nothing now, and you're lucky if you can pay someone to come in and do it. But in those days, everyone had the chance to take up an instrument. It was brilliant. So I took violin lessons, and when you play one string instrument, of course, it helps the others. There's a lot of technique that transfers from one to the other, so that was great. I was playing the piano at home as well, picked up the guitar later on, because it's similar. Again, if you think of a guitar, it's tuned like a ukulele, but with 2 extra strings. So you've not got too much to think about to get from one to the other. So I always liked coming from variety, I like to make my own act, a little variety show, if you like, because nothing goes on too long. I play one instrument, then pick up another one, then pick up another one, then I do a different style. So it's like a variety show. Nothing goes on too long. It's fast-paced, move from one thing to another, and hopefully something to please everybody.
You must have learnt so much, though, watching other acts in the wings as well during the variety shows.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was very, very lucky to start working with Ken Dodd when I was 22, because he, for me, is the best of the lot. He's the king of it. So not only was he brilliant to watch, but he proactively wanted to teach me. I mean, I couldn't be luckier, really, could I? Because as soon as I started working for him, I'd only been working for him a few weeks when I did a show at Leeds City Varieties with him, and he came out of the dressing room, and he's written a page of notes, a whole A4 sheet of notes. Try this, try that, don't do that. And, he was 74 then. He didn't need to bother, didn't need to do that for somebody like me, some green newcomer. But he wanted to do it, because that's how variety acts have always learned. You could never go to college and learn to be an act. It's always been passed on like a tradition. So he wanted to help me, and I, like I said, soaked it up. I wanted to learn, because I'd just come out of university. It was like going back. But this time with the professor of ticklology, as he used to call himself.
What was in these notes then?
Well, things like, that's a good song, that suits your character, the innocent, naive character. Don't be, too brash. People like vulnerability, things like that. So this song's good, that one isn't. Also, that number's too long. It's 3 minutes long. Cut it down, about half. Your opening number wants to be bright and breezy, and it wants to be just over a minute long. All these things, all sorts of notes, and I just soaked it all up. The biggest thing I took away from him, I think, was how to edit the material, because he would edit a gag word for. He wouldn't use 8 words if he could use 6. Because he wanted to cram as much in. And the people don't realise this, because they think of him being legendary for those long, long shows that went on for 4 or 5 hours. But even within that, there was never a wasted second, because he used to... I've seen him do a new routine. I've seen Doddy put a routine in the act that was maybe the best part of 10 minutes long. And then he'd cut it and cut it and cut it, shorter and shorter. And it would end up about 2 minutes. Some of those big musical routines he used to do. And he'd get down to the pith of them. And he'd say, you find the bit that's working, the bit that's having the effect, and you cut out all the dead wood. And then when you've got it down, you've got room to put a new one in. And that's how his act progressed, how it grew over the years. And it was incredible to watch the way he'd do that. And I used to think, he's cut that. I like that bit that he's cut out. But he'd figured out what was the bit getting the results, and he'd lose everything else, because it's what you do that matters. The bits you don't do don't matter. They don't exist. So he would even cut out good stuff because it wasn't as good as another bit. So he ended up with the best of all the material. So he'd say to me, if a song had 3 verses, do the best 2, and then you realise, well, you should really be doing the best 1, because then you can fit more in. And that's how I try to work my act, to cram as much in as I can.
You travel all over the world as well.
Yeah.
I'm quite privileged to have you here, because we're actually...
The pleasure's all mine.
Well, you travel globally.
Well, the cruise ships, not only the cruise ships, but also the ukulele festivals have taken me to a lot of places, because when I started playing the ukulele, it was very unfashionable. And in the 80s, I'm talking about the late 80s, there was only the George Formby Society keeping it alive around here, certainly. And they were brilliant. And they still are. I mean, the George Formby Society has been going since 1961. It's a long time now. It's actually, George Formby died when he was 56. And the society has been going for 59 years now. So it's been going longer than he's ever lived, which is a real achievement, I think. But, the festivals now, I think it's in the last sort of 15, 20 years, the ukuleles suddenly become popular again. Not suddenly, no, that's the wrong word. It's been a gradual thing, but it actually boomed. You could see it starting to spring up. These little clubs. Every town's got a little ukulele club now. When I studied, you had to take a long train ride to find anyone else who played it. But now you can just go into your local town, find a club, a group, and probably go to a festival. It's amazing how that's happened, and that has taken me to Italy, the Czech Republic, Austria, Germany, Finland. I've done ukulele festivals in Finland. I did a banjo one in America. So yeah, it's been an amazing eye-opener, and it's taken me all over the place.
What do you think is the appeal then of the uke?
I think it's various things. It's always been popular for being portable, relatively simple. I think one of the things about it is that you can get a decent sound out of it without taking months and months. You can pick it up, and the same day you pick it up, you can probably get 3 or 4 chords that sound vaguely like a tune. So, but having said that, like anything else, you can spend a lifetime improving on it, which is what I try to do. Also, though, I think the recent boom has been very much a reaction against the mainstream music industry, because they turn out such rubbish, don't they? And everybody's thinking, why are we being fed this stuff? And so now that we've got things like YouTube, etc., and all the social media and all that, people can find a little niche interest and say, well, I like this, and they can then share it, which wasn't always the case. You had to have what you were fed. But now, with the internet, we can share little interests, and if one takes hold, it can become big.
Has that helped you then?
Well, it's been an interesting thing. Yeah, of course it has. But from when I started off, there were so few players. Now there are so many players, but the average standard of playing has plummeted, because everybody's buying these little cheap ukuleles and learning 3 chords and thinking they're a ukulele player. God bless them, good luck to them. If they're having a good time, that's all that matters. But it means there's a lot. It makes the ukulele now look like a very, perhaps a bit of an amateur pastime. But that's fine, because people, once they do get into it, they want to see people who take it a bit more seriously as well. So that's fine. So it has helped in some ways, but it's always a battle it's always an instrument that's battled with its own image, because it's not taken as serious as it probably deserves to be. So I've always tried to show people that you can do crazy difficult things with it. Like I play my classical stuff. I made a classical CD, for instance Chopin, Tchaikovsky. I do the William Tell overture, then I try and do the rock and roll on it, and just to show that you don't have to play 3 chords all the time.
Can you do rock?
You can do, yeah. People now are doing real up-to-date stuff, top 40 stuff on the uke, so it's nice that you can do all sorts with it.
They are cute little things as well, aren't they?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And it's great for Panto because it looks cute, because kids are now playing them. They love to see it in the Panto. So I always get the instruments into the Panto. I go on, for instance, I'd only done that first one for Dougie Chapman, and the following year he said, right, I want you to play comic now. So I'd only done 1 year of Panto before I was cast as Wishy Washy. So I thought, oh God, what am I going to do? Because I was still new to it. So I thought, well, I'll make it comfortable for myself. I'll start off with the uke. So I wrote a song. My name is Wishy Washy, I'm a cheeky Chinaman. I work in Twanky's laundry doing as little as I can. I scrub and rinse and press for all the people of Peking. And as I'm pegging out, they hear me sing. Where does Wishy Washy wash his washing? When Wishy Washy's washing wants a wash. The laundry's only little and every room is full. The only place where there's any space is right inside my scullery. Oh, why does Wishy Washy wash his washing? That's quite a quirky question in its way. From Mondays until Sundays, I'm pressing people's undies. When I finish all my scrubbing, they fetch another tub in, and I have to go on washing just to bring a bit of dosh in. On Wishy Washy's washing day, it's hard to say that on Wishy Washy's washing day. So I'm off, you see. I've gone on as comic for the first time, but I've started with a comic song with the uke, so I feel at home. So, you know, it's more of a confidence thing for me than anything else, because I'm used to starting my act with a song with the uke, you know.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. It really is.
But I haven't sung that for years. Isn't it funny? Once you've done a song for a season, it sticks in your head. But even now, I always start my little spot with a song. And it works, you know, because it's all right. Forget the plot for a minute. We're going to do something daft now, and people love it, you know, because by the time the comic comes on, they've had a few minutes of plot, and they've had a duet and a bit of lovey-dovey, and they've established a couple of characters, so they're ready for a little change. So I thought, right, we'll do an act now. And I love that about Panto. I mean, I think a lot of the more modern scripts are trying to make it flow. They're trying to make it like a piece of musical theatre and a drama. But I love the fact that you can just say, right, forget that for a minute. Let's do a turn.
It must have been, though, quite daunting when Dougie asked you to be lead comic.
Yeah, it was. And I was scared about it because I'm not a comic anyway. You know, I'm a musical actor. There's always comedy in the act. But for me, it's easy to put a few gags in between songs because if they don't laugh, it doesn't matter. Get on with the next song. You know, but so to learn to be a comic... Although, I would say you're halfway there because you've come on with the bright red cheeks and the red nose and the silly costume. You're halfway there. They're laughing at you already. You look silly. So in that way, it's easier than trying to put gags in the act. I mean, Ken Dodd always used to make me put gags in. I've got another gag for you, son. Try this one. You know, and I thought, oh God, I'm in the Ken Dodd show trying to get laughs. Am I crazy? But he made me do it, and it was hard, you know, because by the time I went on, they'd had a couple of hours of gags from Ken. So, you know, it can't be any worse trying to put gags in. But I worked at them, and he said, no, you're doing it wrong, you're delivering it wrong, you've got to do it, you know, tell me the inflections I should use and the timing and everything else. And I gradually learned to do it, so I had the best teacher you could have. But it was scary, first of all, playing comic, but it was a small panto. We did Blackburn Empire, the Thwaites Empire at Blackburn. Only, what does it hold, 250 people, something like that. Shoestring production. Mics across the front of the stage, no radio mics. And yeah, luckily we got, you know, halfway through the rehearsal week, and the cast were saying, oh, how many times have you played comics? So I thought, oh, thank God for that. They didn't realise it was the first time I'd done it. So I thought, thank you very much. That's made me feel better, you know. And it was great. It was fine, you know, because just throw myself into it.
You said about Ken saying about people like vulnerable.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself in that category? I
think it's very true. There's a lot of truth in that. I mean, that's why he didn't have his teeth fixed. You know, somebody said to Ken once, can you have a good-looking comic? And he said, I think if he is, he's got to do something about it right away. You know? Because they don't. It's, you know, he said to me with the instruments as well, doing the act, although it's not a comic, it still applies, because if you do something flashy with the instrument, you know, real showpiece, there's going to be some people sitting out there saying, clever dick, I wish I could do that. You know, and you really don't want that. You want warmth, you want them on your side. That's more important than anything to me. You know, if you can project warmth and make them like you, it actually doesn't matter what you do then. If they like you already, they're going to like what you do, even if it's not their type of music, their kind of comedy or whatever. Even if they don't like the song, if they like you, that's more important than anything else. So that's the big thing, projecting the warmth. and the personality. So I think if you've got a bit of vulnerability about you, then they're more likely to warm to you, because people, don't want to be frightened of you. Unless you're playing the baddie, and then that's a different matter. And I don't think I could do that. I'm too much the other way. I don't think I'd be any good at playing baddie at all. I'd be terrible. I'd want them to like me. I've spent my whole life trying to be liked by the audience.
A baddie with the uke. I don't know.
that just wouldn't work for me. I can't see it. No, I was trying to avoid that at all costs.
No. Here he comes.
Disaster.
So, the George Formby films, then, because you were a huge George Formby fan.
Oh, yeah.
Your website, you sell a lot of George's old items as well.
Yeah, well, the instruments are sell on the website. Yeah, we've had a couple of... I've got a page on my website where I advertise ukuleles for other people. And it started off because... there was just nothing like that when I started it. There was a need for that, for people to be able to find them. And it's gone on for years and years, and I've sold nearly 700 instruments for people now. But it works because it's not a money-making scheme. It's just something that I do for the ukulele community, which is nice, And it's great because we get to see what's out there. And I've bought instruments. People have come to me and said, "I want to advertise this," and I thought, "Oh, I'll buy that." But we have had a couple of George Formbys on there. I'm lucky enough to own one of his myself, because he was, of course, a massive pantomime star as well. As we're talking about pantomime, he was. It was a big part of his career. He did his first panto in the late 20s. There was an impresario called Bert Lohman, who had one arm. They used to call him the one-armed bandit. A bit cruel, really, but that was how he was known. And George Formby paid him £300, which is a lot of money then, to teach him the art of pantomime. But of course, then, it made him. It really, it was a big part of his career. I mean, he played comic at the Palace Theatre, London. In the 50s, he always did he'd do buttons. He liked doing buttons, Idle Jack. In Aladdin, he used to play Mr. Wu. They renamed the part Mr. Wu because he had the Chinese laundry song, So, he was massive in pantomime, and. So I'm very lucky to have this. This is the ukulele banjo that he played leaning on a lamppost on his last recording, his last ever TV show. It's very odd, actually. Just before he died, December 1960, he made a TV programme where he told his life story. And 3 months later, he was gone. Isn't it funny? But, he finishes... the show with leaning on a lamppost on this instrument. Leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street, in case a certain little lady comes by. Oh me, oh my, I hope the little lady comes by. And it's a thrill for me, just to be playing it on the same instrument. You think, oh yeah, that's where his fingers were, But it's magical. So when he did Panto, they just used to stop the show for a few minutes, that's all I've heard, and he'd sing his hits. Because that's what people wanted him to do. Nothing to do with the plot, never mind the plot.
He was the name, wasn't he, though?
Yeah,
that's the
absolutely
thing.
Huge, yeah. Right up to his last one was Bristol Hippodrome, playing Mr. Wu in 1960, yeah. And that was, again, just a couple of months before he died. Yeah.
It's a beautiful instrument.
Well, it's a Gibson made in the 30s. The same Gibson that make the Les Paul guitars and all that. They made banjos and ukuleles, and they're really fantastic instruments. And he had about 20 that he used, different makes. He had several Gibsons though, and. When he died, I think about 10 of them, I should say, were ones that he used a lot. And Brian May has one, George Harrison had one, which is still in his family. And there's one in the V&A Museum. There's one out in Dubai. But most of them are never seen. So it's nice that I've got this, because I do bring it out, and let people have a picture with it or have a strum on it. because the guy who owned it before me was so generous with it. He used to bring it to the George Formby Society, a guy called Lesmore. He'd bring it to the George Formby Society, put it on the stage in its case and say, all right, anybody who wants to play it can play it. And, you know, it's so generous. So I try and keep it out there. I bring it to events like this so people can share it, you know, have a go on it, have a picture with it. And it's still, you know, there for people to see, which I think is really nice.
Are you a bit of a hoarder then?
Oh yeah, I mean I love collecting that. You know, I've got a big George Formby collection. I've got a big Tessie O'Shea collection because she was another heroine of mine. I've got a load of stuff that came from her own private room. You know, when Tessie O'Shea died, she was living in Florida and she had a room in her MD's house, her accompanist, and 15 years later he passed away, and it turned out that he'd left her room untouched, all the stuff still in it, including the instruments, and stuff started to appear on eBay from the estate of Tessie O'Shea. I don't think he kept the room as a shrine or anything. It's just he was an old guy and didn't get around to clearing it out. I think, you know, I don't know much detail, but a banjo player from Disney World heard about this, went round to see it, and the family were just in the middle of throwing it all out, putting it in the skip, you know, or on the fire or something. And he said, "Stop! I'll take it." And he rescued all this stuff. So I'm now lucky enough to own 2 of Tessie O'Shea's instruments as well, and a big pile of papers, you know, scrapbooks, photographs, letters, contracts, all that stuff. What do you do with it? I don't know, but it's fascinating to look at it, and I'm still bit by bit wading through it and reading it all. It's absolutely fantastic.
Do you find yourself thinking that you were possibly born in the wrong era?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm devastated about it. I mean, the number of people that have said to me, if you'd been born 20, 30 years earlier, you'd have done really well.
You're doing all right, to be fair.
I'll keep going, I'll keep afloat. Yeah.
No, but wouldn't you have liked to have been kind of maybe the competition to George?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I'd like to have been... I grew up loving variety and thinking, oh, I've missed the boat because it's gone, it's dead and gone. Right, they said he was dead in 1950, and we're still at it, you know. But I was lucky. I managed to catch the tail end, I think, of some great careers. Like, you know, I worked with Max Bygraves when I was a kid. I did Ronnie Ronald's 80th birthday tour. I worked, as I said, I did 16 years with Ken Dodd. I did the Danny LaRue show. People like this. I did Des O'Connor show on the telly. So I've managed to just catch a lot of great people before they went. So yeah, I've been pretty lucky. So I don't think I should want to change anything really. And now I try to keep it going. I try to keep variety going because now that, you know, my best customers like Dougie and Ken Dodd have gone, I turned to, you know, putting shows on myself. So just because I want to keep, I mean, I could just work on the cruises, of course, but I like to be in a theatre. You know, I like variety, so I do put a few on myself now.
Does it encourage you when you find more children taking up the uke?
Yeah, I think that's nice. I think it's good in a lot of ways for people, for music, for the kids themselves. It's brilliant because it's live, it's real. So, I mean, I cringe when I look at today's music. You know, it's produced by a computer, a lot of it. You know, it's not music, it's just electronic sound. And all right, if people like it, they're entitled to like it. But to me, it's unbelievably fake. It makes me sad, you know, to hear what's on the radio. I just turn on Radio 1 and think, what is it? What is it? Make it stop. So yeah, I probably was born in the wrong era, but never mind, you know, we'll keep flying the flag.
You said as well earlier on about children and not being able to get music lessons at school. How do you think we can try and change that? Well, they've got
to put money into things like the arts, you know. I mean, it's accountant mentality, isn't it? I suppose they think, oh, that doesn't make anything, you know, like with a lot of businesses cut out the entertainment. They say that "Oh, why are we paying all this for entertainers? They don't make any money." But the people are only going there for the entertainment. You know, they don't. The bottom line doesn't show it. It's the same with schools. You know, they say, "Well, we need scientists, we need mathematicians, we need business people in offices working computers." But who's going to make the country full of happy people? You know, maybe that's more important.
That's a bit of Ken Dodd rubbing off on you, isn't it?
Well, happiness. But it's so important. You know, how can you can't live like that. You've got to. I think it's the most noble art. You know what we do in our game, making people happy. What could be more important? You know, if you send people out of the theatre with a big smile on their face, they're going to do good in the world. Simple as that. I think it's very important, very, very important. We should be investing in the arts all the time. Music, drama, dance, whatever it might be, and theatre. But also, you know, when we do have funding for theatrical projects, they always ignore variety. It's as if it doesn't exist. And yet that's the most uplifting kind of show you can go to. Like pantomime. They're only there to cheer people up. So you get people investing in gritty drama and all this, but that's not cheering people up. You know, stories about murder and all that. I don't even like. I never go to a serious play. You know, call me what you like, but I want to go to something uplifting, feel good shows. That's what I call my shows, feel good shows. Because that's what it's all about. It's so important. You can make people happy for a week if they see a good show. And it's very much overlooked. But yeah, what can we do? Just got to keep campaigning, I suppose, or keep showing people by doing it, showing the way. You just got to stick to your guns, really.
Ukulele is one of the most affordable items in a music shop.
Yeah, true. Very, very, very affordable. You can get a ukulele that works for 20, 25 quid. So yeah, maybe that's the best way to change the world.
Cheaper than an Xbox.
Yeah, we'll take them over with ukes.
Whole army of ukes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
petitioning Downing Street.
Yeah. People call it a happy instrument, and then you get a lot of the serious ukers resent that. Then you say, "Well, you can do this, you can do that." Yeah, but I like to see it from both sides. As I've said, I do try to push it and show you can do different things with the ukulele, but I still love the comic side. I try and embrace both, because I mean, like going back to George Formby again, he was a brilliant player, but he made it look so easy. He didn't want anyone to think he was clever. That wouldn't suit his character at all. So he played the fool and made it look very simple. But actually, the music, technically, what he was playing was incredibly complicated and clever.
You'll have to excuse my ignorance, but I know there's the strumming up, strumming down, and there's all these different techniques. And I've watched documentaries on it. I've seen your YouTube videos as well, and I've seen them when they're slowed down. And it's just how on earth you can do that. It's beyond me.
That was always one of the great things about a good variety act, though. A special act, particularly, has some kind of a wow factor, where you're hopefully doing something that nobody else can do. So there's got to be a moment like you get in a magic act, for instance. It's the same for a musical act. You say, "Wow, how do you do that? How did you do that?" And that's the beauty of an act, a special act. Certainly, you're doing something that amazes people, and they think, "I can't believe what I'm seeing." That's the magic of it, and that's how. Going back to Doddy again. How does a comic do that? Because essentially a comic's standing there just talking. So he created the same effect by making it a long show. How does he do that? How did he remember all that? How did he fit all that in? How did he talk about all those subjects? He found ways around the comic's problem of getting the wow factor by making it long, by going so fast that people were aching with laughter. And he literally did something that no one else could do, and that's hard for a comic to get that effect. But he found ways of doing it, and then of course everybody would talk about it because they go home at the end of the night and say, "Well, he didn't get home till 2:00 in the morning because all the buses had gone, the car park was locked," and so then the word of mouth used to spread, and it was like, he was still on stage at 2:00 in the morning. Did you know? He found ways of making
marketing,
of going beyond.
Yeah.
Oh, he found ways around everything. He went beyond what anyone else could do.
Do you get nervous before a performance?
That's a good question, because I think obviously if you're going to stand in front of 1,000 people, you're going to be apprehensive always. But having started quite young, I found ways around it. I don't generally feel stage fright. I channel the nervous energy into the brain. I say, right, we'll use that feeling, that adrenaline, use it to give a good performance. So I talk myself into channeling it. So instead of panicking, I use that extra bit of energy that I've got to say, right, come on, brain, think about what we're doing. And you send it to your brain, you send it to your fingers, and use it as focus. You use it to focus. So I don't have a problem with nerves because I use that energy. And that's a difficult thing to teach if people are struggling with it. You can tell them that, but a lot of people can't do it, or think they can't do it. A lot of confidence starts off by acting confident. You start off, take it as an acting job, and then it becomes habit, hopefully. So I don't have a lot of trouble with it, but I do sympathise with people who do, because it obviously was a very odd thing that we're doing, standing up in front of people and talking at them. But no, I don't have a problem with it. I've learnt to channel it, which is good for me.
How do you look after yourself then? Because you're on the road a lot, you're on cruise ships a lot, where there's a lot of temptation there with the food and the drink.
Oh, tell me about it.
So how do you look after yourself, and also how do you look after your hands?
Well, I try and keep them moving, keep them exercised, try and eat well. It's so difficult on the road. I mean, the cruise ships, you're very lucky because there's great food available all day. So you can eat well. I mean, you can eat too much, of course you can, but at least you can get your nutrition, keep healthy. On the road, it's getting harder all the time. Even the motorway services, bad as they are, they're closing now at 10 o'clock at night. You can't get anything to eat. So if you're on the way home from a gig, you can sometimes not get anything. It's awful. And all you can do is go to the garage, get crisps, and chocolate bars. It's terrible trying to keep healthy doing this job. It's more difficult than it ought to be. And yeah, you can bring food from home and healthy food, but it's time, isn't it? Having the time. So it is very difficult. You've got to make such a conscious effort to try and do it. Oh, that'll be healthy, so I'll have that. But it's an effort. I'm sure everybody finds it a job to do. Yeah.
Are you on the road more than you are at home?
Yeah, I mean, not so much as I used to be. When I was working for Dougie Chapman, we would do, in his tours, we'd do 4, 5, 6 theatres a week. If there was 5 or 6, I often used to fill in the day off with a Ken Dodd show, because Dougie used to do weekdays and Ken Dodd used to do weekends mainly. So as many times I'd do a run of 10 days with a different theatre every day. So I used to have to pack for 3 weeks away. And people, everybody throws about that term, living out of a suitcase. But when you really do it to that extent, you know what it means, because you've got a suitcase and then you've got another suitcase. And you think, right, I need that. So you tip everything out and put the stuff you need in one suitcase, stick the other stuff in the other suitcase, and you're off out the door again. Hopefully you had time to do the laundry before you left, but it's very, very tough. It's not easy. I mean, the old days when they used to do a week everywhere, I think they thought that was hard then. But now, of course, it's one-nighters. No, you're lucky if you fill one night now, because people are out of the habit of going to the theatre, to the extent that they used to. So, yeah, living out of a suitcase, living on the road, living in your car. I have to have a comfortable car, because I know I'm going to spend sometimes 10 hours a day in it.
Ouch.
The pain on your face when I said that.
I can't think of anything worse than being in the car for 10 hours.
Yeah.
So what are you listening to then when you're driving along?
I've got jazz CDs I like. I put the radio on if there's anything on. And but I've just very recently dragged myself into the 21st century. I've now got the unlimited Wi-Fi dongle, so I can now put internet stuff on. So I might start listening to the Panto podcast.
Oh,
that'd be a good idea, wouldn't it?
That's good. Well, I'm going to get you right at the end with the question that you're not expecting, but we'll go into that later on. Going back though to pantomime, are there any favourite parts of the pantomime? Any favourite routines that you enjoy?
Oh, I love doing the laundry scene at the beginning of Act 2 of Aladdin. That's great fun, going through the mangle and all that kind of thing, and in the washing machine. I had a lot of fun with that. I've done a lot of Aladdins over the years. My favourite part to play has been buttons. I love playing buttons, because you're a little bit more part of it all with buttons, and you've got the scenes with cinders and, you know, there's a bit more acting to it than some of them. I know I've said how much I like doing the spot, but you like to feel you're part of it all as well. Last year, I played Starkey the Pirate in Peter Pan at Crewe, and that was nice. I really enjoyed that because it was the first one I'd done for Kudos, but they were very nice. They just sent me, they trusted me, which was brilliant. They sent me the script and they just said, Starkey routine here, Starkey routine there, and they let me do what I wanted to do, which was brilliant that they trusted me like that. And so I made up my own little routine. Oh, look, I found this violin. What, shall I try and play it? You know, and so you're off. You know, and then I loved doing that. It was a really nice part. I put my Christmas medley in the second half. Got all the kids singing along with that. So that was really good fun. I like doing my spot because I've got a nice medley that I do very often. And it finishes with jingle bells, and you know, when the kids are in, it's magic, you know, because it's so easy for them to sing along, and they just get so into it. And when you hear a few hundred kids singing that at the top of their voices, it's magic, you know. So I really enjoy doing that, and it whips them up to a frenzy, as they say, you know. So when you feel you've really got them in the mood, that's a great feeling.
I'm sure Grandad will be very proud of you.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
For that, yeah.
Yeah.
How much of you then is still that child playing the ukulele with the people watching you?
Well, I think there's a lot of that about this job. You know, it's a way of trying to pretend you haven't grown up, isn't it? Definitely. You know, I think we all are big kids when we go on stage, aren't we, in a way? Yeah. But I suppose there's a bit of that. I think it keeps you young doing it, you know, because it is a time you can forget everything else and just be that part and forget about all you have to forget about everything else and just immerse yourself in the joy of it for a few minutes. So I think it's a childlike in some ways, but it's good for you. And I think it keeps me healthy. I think a lot of performers, you know, like Doddy, I think doing his act kept him fit. That's how he reached that ripe old age, still managing to do it. It was good for him. It kept him going. Yeah.
You said you went to university. What were you actually studying to become?
Well, I studied music at Oxford, New College, Oxford, which was a very theoretical course. It was history, analysis, compositional techniques, and it was very dry. As I say, theoretical, as theoretical as it can get. But you did all your playing in your spare time, because every college had an orchestra. None of them had enough players, so you get a knock on the door saying, "Oh, we've got a concert tonight. Rehearsal at 6 o'clock. Concert at 8 o'clock. We need some violins. Can you come along?" And so you got an amazing repertoire of music by just doing that. You could play every night if you had time, you know. So that was brilliant. It was a great background, a great education. But I always enjoyed the what's the opposite of the legitimate? I'm not going to call it illegitimate. But I always loved musical. I love vaudeville. I love variety. So I transferred what I learned to my kind of music. In fact, I did actually transfer it before I left. I did the first ever recital for my music degree. on the ukulele. No one had done it before. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to pave the way for more people to follow. But even 20 years on, I don't think anyone else has ever done it yet.
What was the recital then?
Well, I did my act, basically. I mean, we had to do a 40-minute recital. So I did the old comic numbers. I did a few of my little arrangements. And it was also the first time that anyone had played and sung at the same time. They'd had singers and they'd had instrumentalists, but they'd never had anyone do both. So it was quite interesting. And because it was so unusual, it got on the news, it was on the TV news, in the papers and everything like that. So it was quite an event at the time. In fact, I think the university press office used me as a way, because they've been criticised for elitism and all that, they used me as a way to say, no, anything goes here. But that gave me a big boost right at the right time, because I was just leaving, going into profession. So it gave me some publicity to kickstart me. It was good.
Do you talent spot much?
Not a great deal. I suppose we all do a bit, don't we? And I always try and help acts out. If I can recommend anyone for a gig, I'll do it. And I always, I'm always kind of looking out for people I can book for my shows. But I've got a lot of friends in the business who I admire what they do, and I try to provide a bit of work for them if I can. But we're always looking out for new talents, and it's nice when you see somebody coming up you think's great. But no, it's not something I have only got into the producing side because I fell into it. I never set out to do that. My favourite thing is just doing my act, but I've ended up producing shows all over the place. I've got about 24 shows coming up that are my productions at the moment, and it's just because it's a way of providing work for myself and for others, and if an opportunity comes up, I'll say, yeah, we'll put a show in there. But it's not really my ambition to be a producer. It's just a byproduct of doing the act.
So you couldn't see yourself producing pantomime anytime soon?
I'm trying to avoid it.
Where are you this Christmas then?
This Christmas I'll be at Cardiff. Yeah. It's not announced yet, but I'm probably will be by the time this goes out. If not, I'll tell you to cut it out. Yeah, I'll be down at Cardiff in Aladdin.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's a big one. New Theatre Cardiff. I'll be very excited about that.
Are there any theatres that you prefer to play in?
I love the old style, Matcham style theatres. I don't know why, having that design out there, why anyone ever changed it afterwards, because it's beautiful, for audience and performers. Everything works. You're so intimate, you feel, even in a great big place, you feel intimate. Everyone can see, everyone can hear. I wonder why we ever changed that design afterwards. It's a shame. But I love to be in a place like that. Partly because I'm a sentimental old fool, and I just love the history of it. But they do also work. Those buildings work. They're fit for purpose. Unlike some of these. Later on, we went to these multi-purpose venues that are not fit for any purpose, aren't they? They're like a brick shed.
Sports hall, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't like those. But as Doddy always used to say, you make your own atmosphere. He'd go and work in them. He'd work in sports hall, like here, the Sands Centre. It's not the old theatrical design, but once he got in there, as long as at the end of the day, if they can see you and hear you, you can do the rest.
Is it tricky then, being away from home so much with family life over the years?
Oh, it can be, yeah. You've got to have understanding family and friends, who can appreciate why you're away and how difficult it is to keep in touch, But I suppose for that reason you gravitate to people who do understand it, don't you? Yeah. But every performer struggles with that. It's testing. Of course it is. Yeah.
Was it tricky then being away from the parents when you were getting into pantomime?
Well, no, they were very, very understanding all the way through, because I'd grown up doing performances here, there, and everywhere. So they were used to me doing what I did, and they always supported me. That's so important, for performers to have that support from the people around them. You can't manage without it. If you don't have it, you're really stuck. So I was very lucky.
Any instruments that you'd like to be able to play?
Well, I always wish I got further with the piano. I do play the piano, and I know my way around it pretty well, but I don't have a piano at home. And it's so rare. Well, my mum's got. Any time I go back to my mum's, I'm on the piano like a shot because I miss it, But with the portable instruments like the uke, the violin, yes, you can have it with you and play it. But I end up feeling rusty on the piano because I only see it once in a blue moon. If I play a venue with a piano in the corner, as soon as there's nobody about, I'll always go and have a tinkle on it to try and keep my hands moving. But I'd like to have got to grips better with the piano. But that's something I had to give. I got to. It was about the time I was doing my A-levels. I started learning my grade 8 piano pieces, and I was too busy with the A-levels. I said, I'll have to put that exam off, and I never took my grade 8. So it was a shame, but I just didn't have the hours in the day to fit everything in. So I always regret not spending a bit more time on the piano.
You said earlier you like playing buttons.
Yeah.
And that involves a lot of pathos in that part.
Yeah,
Could you ever see yourself... I know you said you wouldn't go and see a sort of a serious play, but would you ever see yourself getting into a more serious role?
Yeah, it's something I'd like to do. Whether that will ever happen, I don't know, because I'm always so busy doing everything else. But it's one of those things you think, I fancy having a go at that. See, I've never studied acting in any way. I've just fallen into playing these comic parts as an extension of my act. So bit by bit, I've got further on with it just by doing a little bit at a time. And I feel that, I understand how an actor communicates now. But it is something that I would love to have a chance to do more of. But how do you do more of it without giving up something else? That's the trouble, isn't it? So
you're always so busy, aren't you?
Fitting everything in, isn't it? Yeah, it does fascinate me. I love to watch. I do love to watch good actors. But, I feel a lot of theatre has gone a little bit too edgy. I think let's get back to entertaining people, cheering people up. That's more important.
How often a day do you practice then?
Well, I practice when I've got a purpose. This is a question that comes up from musicians. How much practice should I do? And in an ideal world, it would be nice to say, I've got 2 hours a day to play my instruments. But no one can live like that. When I was at college, the guy in the room next to me was a cellist. He was a brilliant cello player. And he used to do 2 hours practice before he had his breakfast. I was still asleep, he was keeping me awake. And then he'd have his breakfast, and then he'd do another 2 hours. And I thought, it's very admirable, but who can live like that? You've got to be able to do it with less work than that. No one's got time for that. So the thing about practice is, it should be a problem-solving exercise. It's not a case of putting the hours in. It's a case of saying, right, I need to learn how to play that phrase. So you play that phrase, you break it down slowly, you do it time and time again until you can do it. And that's a problem solved. Right, now what do I need to do? You've got to look at practice in that pragmatic way. It's not about how many hours you put in, it's about what problems do you solve. And so I say to people, you can get by on a lot less practice than you think. And you can do mental practice. I practice in my head when I'm on a plane or when I'm in a car journey, even when I'm driving. I can have music going on in my head, and I can be thinking about what my fingers are going to be doing, so I can practice it without the instrument. And there's a lot to be said for that. You can learn a lot without actually doing it. So when you're on the move all the time, that becomes the way you learn. I mean, I've driven to gigs thinking, right, well, I've got to do this, I've got to say this, I've got to introduce this act, then I've got to do that song, then I've got to... And I've learnt what I'm going to do on the way to the gig whilst driving there, because I don't have time to do it any other way. But it works, as long as you can think about it, you can make it work.
What's the longest then you've ever not played?
The longest I've not played would be about a week. But I used to be playing. I used to be doing 6-7 gigs a week, every week. So I didn't practice so much. I was playing anyway. So then your sound check becomes a bit of practice, and you'd have a bit of a warm up before the show, and that becomes your practice. So, like I say again, it's a problem solving thing. So if you're putting a new number in, then obviously you've got to practice that new number. Or if you're doing an arrangement or whatever, you pick the instrument up to figure out what it's going to be, how it's going to go. But recently I've had so much work on trying to promote the shows that I've got coming up that I realised I got to about a week without picking the instrument up, because I hadn't had a gig for a week and I hadn't picked it up. So I thought, this is no good. I'm used to playing every day pretty much. And I had to say to myself, come on, you need to do some work now. So that was a rare time when I had to actually say, right, I'm going to sit down and practice. But usually I'm doing enough to not have to do that.
Are there any particular moves, or I don't know what the terminology is, but is there anything that's more tricky to do than anything else and that you've actually now perfected?
Well, yeah, I mean, to be honest, although I'm a bright and breezy entertainer, I still do think of myself as a musician and take it seriously. So I do try, although audience comes first and you give them what they want, I do try to get in something a bit clever as well for my own, and for the benefit of the people who do appreciate it. I mean, 90% of an audience, of any audience, aren't really going to know what you're doing. They don't need to know. They don't need to know the intricacies of what you're playing, how it works, and the harmony and the rhythm and the technicalities of what you're actually doing with your hands. It doesn't concern them. They just want to know, is it entertaining or is it not? So you've got to pander to them as much as they need. But there's always that other couple of percent who you think, well, there will be people who actually know if it's clever or not. So you want them to appreciate it as well, just for your own mental preservation, I suppose. But I do try and make it clever as well, and that keeps me keeps the hands moving, keeps the brain moving, doesn't it? So I try to deliberately have something a bit clever in every number, if not the whole thing. I do a movie themes medley, which is one of the most difficult things I play on the violin, and it's really hard, but that's not the point of it. The point of it is there's a lot of tunes that people know and they can hum along with it and enjoy it and see how many they can spot in the 3 minutes, But it is actually, when violinists, occasionally I've done it on the cruise or something, there's been a classical violinist on as well, and they've said, oh, that was quite a blow, that number, wasn't it? Because they appreciate that it's actually pretty difficult. But that's good for me, because it keeps me, if your playing is going to be the only practice you have, then you want it to be a workout as well. So yeah, it's good fun. You try and keep yourself going in whatever ways you can. But yeah, there's some of the stuff I do is quite tricky stuff. Yeah.
What would you say was the longest to master?
Well, it's a difficult question, because every instrument you play, the actual physicality of what your hands are doing on the instrument is only a fraction of it. Most of what's going on is musicality in your head. So they're all very similar in that respect. It's about being a music. The instrument is just a means of getting the music out into sound waves, but the music is a mental process. But the violin is a particularly difficult instrument, because there's no clues where the notes are. On a guitar or a ukulele, you've got frets. On a piano, you've got keys. You can't play a piano out of tune unless it's out of tune, because you press the key and it's in tune. With the violin, similar to the French horn, that's another notoriously difficult, not that I play one, notoriously difficult, because you have to pitch the notes out of nowhere. You've got to know exactly where they are, and that's what makes it a little more difficult than everything else. So yeah, the violin's a beautiful instrument, though. It's worth the effort, because you can do so much with it. It's a magnificent thing.
What's your favourite George Formby track then?
Oh, well, probably Leaning on a Lamppost. It's an unusual one, because he recorded over 200 songs, getting on for 250 different songs, but they're all very similar when you look at them. They're formulaic comic songs, most of them. 3 verses, 3 choruses, a few daft couplets and a little uke solo. But when you get to Leaning on a Lamppost, suddenly this is a sentimental love song that he would finish his act with, and it's almost, perhaps not a tear-jerker, but it's a very sentimental song, and it's so out of character. Well, not character, but it's not a normal type of song, but it does give you a whole other look at his personality, because suddenly he's a human being, not just a comedy machine. So I love that song. It's a very good song, written by Noel Gay. And it was put into Me and My Girl. It was George Formby had it originally, but when they revived Me and My Girl in the 80s, they put Leaning on a Lamppost in, because he was writing it at the same time. And perhaps it would have gone in if Formby hadn't had it, I don't know. But it was nice that they put it in there. So that's a lovely song.
What about your own compositions then?
Yeah, I have done quite a bit of composing lately. I mean, I've always done songs like the Panto songs I do. I always do a comic song for the character, like I played in my wishy-washy song. I've got a Muddles song, muddling along with a smile and a song. I've got a Silly Billy song, and various ones. I've got a nice Buttons song, but they're always little compositions to serve a purpose. You say, right, Buttons needs a song to get on, it needs to be 1.5 minutes long, and so you write it to suit. And this is introducing the character. It's pretty easy to do that, because it's what its purpose it's got to serve, and so you write something to fit. But I recently had the chance to go completely the opposite way. The lady who runs the biggest ukulele festival in Britain, called the Grand Northern Ukulele Festival, she said to me, we want you to write something new and unusual. So I had a blank canvas to work on, to just come up with something unusual. That was the brief. So I wrote a piece for ukulele with string quartet, 10 minutes long. So that was so different from what I'm used to doing, that it was really challenging, of course, but very fulfilling as well, because it's something I never had the chance or the time to do. And then suddenly I got this commission to do it. So it was like, wow, I'll have to give this a bit of thought. So it took me back really to my student days, because that's probably the last time I actually did anything like that. And I had to really get my brain in gear, but I was pleased with the way it came out. It was nice piece.
What would be your advice then to adults and children listening who want to take up the ukulele?
Oh, the ukulele, you must do it. Do it, don't hesitate, because it's, like I said, it's a thing that will get you results very quickly. You'll very quickly feel like you're making music. You don't have to grapple with it too long for it to start to sound okay. But there's no limit to where you can go with it. So absolutely do it. There's tuition online. You can learn from a book, or you can probably find a club. That's the best way. Find a club nearby, the George Formby Society, Ukulele Society of Great Britain, or a local uke group. Just get there, see other people playing, ask them for tips. They'll all help. They're all friendly. Yeah, pretty much all the ukulele people are always friendly.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, have you? Yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's not like some... you can't imagine having these festivals for some instruments. You know, can you imagine going to a harp convention or some, you know, an oboe society? I'm sure it's not the same. The uke is very friendly. It's very inclusive, and that's one of the beautiful things about it. Everybody comes with a big smile on their face to share what they've got. It's lovely.
Well, this leads me to my last question for you. Your dream pantomime. You can be in it. You can be in the stalls watching it. You can choose the venue. And the cast can be alive or dead.
Right. Wow. I would obviously love to have seen George Formby playing comic. Probably Buttons. I'd like to have seen him do that, which is one that he did quite a lot. So that would be a dream to see how he did that, because he was always been a hero. He's been such an influence on my whole life, really. So I'd have loved to see that, and that being my favourite part. I would think that would probably be top of the list. But then again, of course, you say I can be in it. I wouldn't have minded being in it with him as well. That would be great. I wish I'd seen Ken Dodd in Panto, because when I started working with him, as I said, he was in his 70s, and although I did 16 years with him, I think he'd just done his last Panto a year or two before I started working with him. I may be wrong, I'd have to check that, but I think I'm right in saying that. He just got to the end of that, and I'd love to have seen him, because everyone raves about how great he was as a comic. But I also admire people like Billy Pearce. I mean, he's as good as it gets, you know. But yeah, I think those are the two. I'd like to have seen George, and I'd like to have seen Ken playing comic.
Your uglies?
Oh, good heavens! Well, I don't know. I wouldn't have minded. I don't know if Les Dawson ever played Ugly Sister, but I'd like to have seen it. I know he played Dane. I don't know if he ever did.
Roy Barraclough.
They might have done. That would, yeah. I wonder if they did. Did they ever do that? They might have done.
I don't know.
I'd love to look that up.
Come on, people, you need to look this up.
Somebody will know.
They'll know. I should know, but
so should I, really. I mean, I've got enough old programmes.
And your Cinders?
Cinders? Well, the best Cinderella is my girlfriend. That Helen, that's how we met. I was Buttons, she was Cinders.
Is that how it started?
Yeah. Helen Farrell.
So you didn't know each other at all before?
We'd done a pantomime together, but so we gradually got to know one another, yeah. And then, well, since then we've done Snow White and Muddles as well.
Saves on the digs, I suppose, doesn't it?
Of course, yeah.
Oh, how wonderful! And the venue?
Blackpool Grand would spring to mind, or the Palladium would do.
Have you played there, by the way?
I have done a charity show at the Palladium, yeah, but I've never got paid for working there yet.
You don't need to, though, really, for the Palladium, do you?
No, it doesn't bother me at all. No. There you go.
What's it like walking out onto that stage of the Palladium?
Well, you just think about the history, don't you? It's like, well, as I said earlier, we're picking up the George Formby uke. You just think of all that history. If only it could tell stories. And it's the same on a stage like that. You're just thinking of the people who've stood there. It's just, I mean, okay, some cynical people might say, well, it's just a building, you know, but I think there's magic in every floorboard. Myself, you know, I think the echoes are still there somewhere, reverberating around with all those great performances from great stars. I love the magic of that.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for taking part in the Panto podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And could I ask you, could we get a little tune just to finish up on, if that's okay?
Yeah, what should we have?
What would you like? It's your podcast.
Wow. Why don't I play that song I was just talking about? Leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street, in case a certain little lady comes by. Oh me, oh my, I hope the little lady comes by. I don't know if she'll get away, she doesn't always get away. Anyhow, I know that she'll try. Oh me, oh my, I hope the little lady comes by. There's no other girl I could wait for, but this one I'd break any date for. I won't have to ask what she's late for. She'd never leave me flat, she's not a girl like that. Oh, she's absolutely wonderful and marvellous and beautiful, and anyone can understand why. I'm leaning on a lamppost at the corner of the street, in case a certain little lady passes by.
Yay! Thanks so much.